Jamie Foxx didn't slowly fade from the spotlight. He vanished. One day he was on set, filming a big-budget movie in Atlanta, joking with the crew like nothing was wrong. The next, he was gone. No photos. No hospital leaks. No shaky fan videos outside a medical center. Just silence. For an A-list star with decades in the industry, that kind of disappearance didn't feel normal. And almost immediately, the internet started asking questions that went far beyond a simple health scare. Because the timing felt off. As Jamie dropped out of sight in 2023, another powerful name in Hollywood was quietly becoming radioactive. Diddy's empire, once untouchable, was starting to crack. Lawsuits were stacking up. Whispers about private parties were getting louder. And suddenly, old clips, old jokes, and old stories didn't sound funny anymore. They sounded like warnings people ignored at the time. So when rumors started spreading that Jamie hadn't just gotten sick, that he may have seen or known something he wasn't supposed to, people listened. Some claimed he was taken away as a federal witness. Others said he was poisoned. A few went even further, suggesting his disappearance was a cover-up hiding something much darker. None of it was proven, but the sheer volume of speculation made one thing clear. People didn't believe the story was that simple. And the more everyone tried to piece it together, the more one question refused to go away. If Jamie Foxx's disappearance was really just a medical emergency, why did it happen at the exact moment Hollywood's most secretive party culture was starting to collapse? Everything officially unraveled in April of 2023. Jamie Foxx was in Atlanta, deep into filming Back in Action, when what started as a normal workday suddenly turned into something no one saw coming. According to Jamie himself, it began with a crushing headache. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that screamed emergency. He even asked someone nearby for aspirin, expecting it to pass like any other bad day on set. But before he could take it, everything went black. The next thing Jamie remembers is not an ambulance ride or doctors rushing around him. It's waking up weeks later, confused, disoriented, and being told that nearly 20 days of his life were completely gone. In that missing time, his body had collapsed. He had been rushed to the hospital, placed into intensive care, and slipped into a coma. Doctors would later tell him that what happened wasn't minor at all. It was a brain bleed that led to a stroke, and at one point, his chances of surviving were terrifyingly low. At the time, the public wasn't given any of those details. All anyone heard was a carefully worded statement from his family calling it a medical complication. That was it. No updates. No visuals. No clarification. For weeks, then months, Jamie Foxx might as well have disappeared off the face of the earth. In an industry where paparazzi track every move and hospital visits rarely stay private, the silence felt strange. As days turned into weeks, people started noticing how controlled everything was. No nurses leaking information. No visitors caught on camera. No insiders whispering to gossip blogs. Just a wall of quiet around one of the most recognizable faces in entertainment. And in that silence, speculation rushed in to fill the gap. Because when a celebrity collapses without warning, loses weeks of memory, and then vanishes completely, people don't just accept medical complication and move on. Especially not when the timing feels like more than a coincidence. Months later, Jamie finally broke the silence himself. When he reappeared, thinner, slower, but alive, he decided to explain what actually happened in his own words. According to Jamie, doctors discovered that he had suffered a brain bleed that triggered a stroke. His condition was so serious that he was placed into a coma, and at one point, he was told his chances of making it were almost non-existent. One moment he was standing there with a headache, and the next thing he remembers is waking up in a hospital bed, being told he'd almost died. Jamie said the scariest part wasn't even the pain. It was the missing time. Nearly 20 days of his life were just gone. No memories. No sense of what happened in between. And while his body was fighting to survive, the world outside was spinning stories about him that he never expected to see. Once he was strong enough, he did what most people do when they're stuck in a hospital bed with a phone. He started scrolling. Instead of just prayers and well wishes, Jamie found himself face-to-face with conspiracy videos claiming all kinds of wild things. Some said he was taken as a federal witness. Others claimed he'd been poisoned. A few even pushed the idea that he'd been cloned or replaced. Jamie later joked that reading those theories had him laughing and crying at the same time, and that even his psychiatrist was shocked by how deep the internet had gone trying to explain his disappearance. Eventually, Jamie addressed the biggest rumor head-on. He made it clear that, from his perspective, this was a medical emergency, not an attack. He openly dismissed the idea that Diddy had anything to do with what happened to him, saying flat out that nobody tried to take him out. In his version of events, there was no secret plot, no hidden enemies, just a sudden, terrifying health crisis that nearly ended his life. On the surface, it sounded like a clean ending. A freak medical scare. A lucky survival. A man grateful to still be here. But for a lot of people watching from the outside, that explanation didn't close the case. It only set the stage for the next wave of questions. The internet didn't push back because it hates Jamie Foxx. It pushed back because the timing felt impossible to ignore. His collapse didn't happen in a quiet moment of Hollywood calm. It happened right as whispers about Diddy were starting to turn into something heavier. Lawsuits were surfacing. Former insiders were talking. And stories about private parties that used to sound like exaggerated celebrity folklore were suddenly being described in a much darker way. As that context changed, people started looking backward instead of forward. Old clips resurfaced of Jamie joking about Diddy's parties, laughing about how wild they were, how he always made sure to leave early. Back then, those comments sounded like harmless humor. Just another celebrity poking fun at an over-the-top lifestyle. But once Diddy's image began cracking, those same jokes felt different. Lines like, "I was out by 9, stopped sounding funny, and started sounding cautious." The internet has a way of re-editing history once new information comes out. Every photo of Jamie and Diddy together started circulating again. Every story about exclusive mansion parties, invite-only rooms, and unspoken rules got replayed with a new lens. People began asking whether Jamie wasn't just nearby, but fully aware of how that world operated. Not as a victim, but as someone who had seen enough to know when things felt off. And then there was the silence. For months, Jamie's disappearance had been tightly controlled. No leaks. No accidental confirmations. No messy contradictions. To some, that level of control didn't feel like chaos from a medical emergency. It felt organized, planned. The kind of silence that usually surrounds legal situations, not sudden health scares. That perception, fair or not, only made people dig harder. So even when Jamie came back and told his story, many viewers treated it as one version, not the final word. Online, the question shifted from "Did he get sick?" to "Why did this happen now?" And once people start asking that, they don't stop at the official explanation. That's when a new voice entered the conversation and sent the speculation into overdrive. A former celebrity bodyguard, known online as Big Homie CC, sat down for an interview and made claims that immediately grabbed attention. To be clear, these were allegations, not proven facts. But the way he described the world behind elite Hollywood parties made a lot of people pause. According to him, spiking drinks wasn't some rare accident. He claimed it was something that allegedly happened on purpose in certain circles. He said he personally tested positive for cyanide multiple times after nights out, and claimed that his brother and a female client he was protecting were also allegedly poisoned. In his telling, this wasn't about one careless night or someone mixing the wrong thing. He painted a picture of an environment where tampering with drinks was allegedly used as a way to scare people, punish them, or make sure they stayed quiet after seeing something they weren't supposed to see. Then he made the claim that really lit the internet on fire. He alleged that Jamie Foxx was poisoned and that, because of it, Jamie supposedly contacted the FBI. Again, there has been no public confirmation of this. No court documents. No official statements. Just one man's account. But coming at a time when trust in Hollywood power structures was already crumbling, those words landed hard. What made his story unsettling wasn't just the name dropping. It was the pattern he described. A scene where powerful people move freely, where substances flow without limits, and where consequences don't always come in obvious ways. If someone gets sick, it can be written off as exhaustion. If someone collapses, it can be labeled a medical issue. And in that kind of environment, the line between accident and intent becomes dangerously blurred. For many listeners, The Bodyguard's claims didn't prove anything, but they did something else just as powerful. They made people question whether Jamie's sudden collapse could fit into a much bigger, much uglier picture that was only now starting to surface. What made these stories hit so hard is the environment they came from. A side of Hollywood most people only see through glitzy magazine spreads or Instagram posts. Jamie Foxx and Diddy weren't just showing up to regular parties. These were carefully curated, invite-only events where money, influence, and secrecy collided. The drinks weren't just cocktails. They were designer mixes, substances that in the right hands were luxury upgrades, and in the wrong hands could be dangerous. People bragged about them like status symbols, but even small mistakes could have serious consequences. Ketamine, MDMA, GHB, and other so-called designer substances were all allegedly floating through these VIP rooms, sometimes combined in unpredictable ways. A wrong dose, a tired body, or an already stressed mind could turn a night of fun into a medical emergency almost instantly. Pink, a cocktail with no fixed formula, was particularly risky. What one person called safe could easily become toxic when mixed by someone else. And while some of these stories sound like exaggerations, anyone inside the scene would tell you that the risks weren't just theoretical. Big Homie CC's allegations about spiking and cyanide cast the environment in an even darker light. The same room that hosted laughter, music, and celebrity selfies could allegedly become a place of intimidation and control. Drinks could be altered not just for fun, but to scare, punish, or make sure someone didn't share what they'd seen. Even without overt intent to harm, one bad combination of substances, one sabotage drink, or one exhausted body could result in the kind of near-death incidents that now make people look back at Jamie's collapse with suspicion. In other words, it wasn't a single event that made this world dangerous. It was the combination of high stakes, secrecy, power imbalances, and chemicals. That's what turned normal partying into something that, at a glance, could look like an accident. And in the context of elite Hollywood circles, it could also look like a perfect cover. But here's where the story gets more complicated. Jamie Foxx wasn't just a casual attendee or an accidental bystander at these parties. He was part of the inner circle. He moved in the same spaces as the biggest names in music and Hollywood, attending Grammy Week mansion events, private rooftop gatherings, and exclusive after-parties where rules were strict and eyes were everywhere. These weren't casual hangouts. They were carefully curated worlds where influence, power, and visibility dictated every move. Jamie knew the terrain, and he navigated it expertly. Former bodyguards and insiders recall moments from these events that would make an outsider's jaw drop. From what they describe, it wasn't just dancing and celebrity selfies. There were situations unfolding in plain sight that blurred the lines between fun and chaos, consent and pressure. Jamie had been there before. He understood the environment, and he made choices within it, sometimes leaving early, sometimes staying late. Every joke he made about slipping out by 9 suddenly took on a different weight. And it's that context that makes the bodyguard's claims about cyanide, spiked bottles, and alleged threats land differently. Jamie's presence in these spaces wasn't accidental. He was there by choice, enjoying the perks of elite Hollywood life, while also seeing firsthand how quickly the line between danger and entertainment could blur. That doesn't make him guilty of anything, but it does change the narrative. He wasn't some naive extra caught in a storm. He was someone who understood the stakes, who played in the world, and who, ultimately, had to confront the risks head-on when his body forced him to step back. It's a subtle shift, but a significant one. Jamie stops being just a victim of circumstance and starts looking like someone who knew the game, benefited from it, and yet, in a cruel twist, experienced the consequences that even insiders can't always escape. It's a reminder that in Hollywood's most exclusive circles, survival isn't just about talent or fame. It's about knowing how to navigate a world where the rules are often unspoken and the dangers are real. Even as Jamie Foxx's near-death experience was dominating headlines, another side of his story quietly resurfaced, one that had been lingering in the background for years. In 2018, a woman came forward with an allegation tied to a party from 2002 in Las Vegas. She claimed that Jamie had acted inappropriately toward her, and though he denied the accusation completely, the case was ultimately closed because the statute of limitations had expired. At the time, it was largely seen as a closed chapter, a story from the past that didn't carry immediate consequences. Fast forward to 2023, and the narrative shifted slightly when another woman filed a lawsuit in New York related to a rooftop bar incident in 2015. This claim was filed under the Adult Survivors Act, which was created to allow certain old cases to be revisited within a limited time frame. Jamie's team responded swiftly, labeling the story a fabrication and pushing for dismissal, maintaining that any interactions were fully consensual. Legally, Jamie remains free of criminal conviction. No jury has declared him guilty of any crime. But even without a conviction, patterns begin to emerge when the allegations are viewed alongside the environments Jamie frequented. The same elite circles, the same power dynamics, and the same culture of secrecy and unspoken rules that define those high-profile parties show up repeatedly. It raises questions not about guilt or innocence, but about the ecosystem in which these incidents took place. From a neutral perspective, the lawsuits highlight a recurring tension between power, influence, and accountability, one that Jamie navigated for years and that, in hindsight, frames much of the controversy surrounding both his collapse and his past actions. For viewers, it's not about proving wrongdoing. It's about understanding the patterns. A network of elite parties, high stakes, and whispered secrets forms a backdrop where incidents, alleged or confirmed, start to feel connected. And when those same circles intersect with health emergencies, legal battles, and powerful names like Diddy, the story becomes far more complex than any single headline could capture. And that brings us to the most complicated question of all. Was Jamie Foxx merely a victim of Hollywood's hidden dangers, or was he also a participant in a world he knew was risky? From the outside, it's easy to see him as the man who collapsed in 2023, who nearly died, and who survived a terrifying brush with death. But when you look closer, a different picture begins to emerge. Jamie wasn't wandering into these elite spaces blindly. He chose to be there. He attended mansion parties during Grammy week, rubbed elbows with the biggest stars, and laughed through moments that, in hindsight, were far more serious than they seemed. Some fans argue that his jokes about leaving Diddy's parties early, his presence at events with strict rules and secretive dynamics, and his awareness of the scene suggest he wasn't just surviving. He was navigating, benefiting, and, in some ways, maintaining the system. The collapse that nearly killed him didn't occur in a vacuum. It happened inside a culture that blurred the line between danger and privilege, risk and entertainment. And when a former bodyguard alleges that poisoning, intimidation, and extreme control were part of that environment, it complicates the narrative even further. It doesn't make Jamie guilty of any crime. It doesn't rewrite the medical emergency he endured, but it does force the audience to confront a harder truth about Hollywood's inner circle. Being present, being aware, and even enjoying certain perks doesn't necessarily protect someone from the consequences when the system turns on them. Jamie Foxx's story becomes a cautionary tale about choice and consequence, about the thin line between influence and exposure, and about the way power can shape both survival and accountability. In the end, Jamie may be both a survivor and a participant. He lived through one of the most frightening experiences of his life, yet he also understood the world he was in and stayed in it longer than most outsiders would dare. It's a duality that leaves viewers questioning not just what happened to him, but how much of Hollywood's hidden side anyone can truly escape. That what's undeniable is this: Jamie Foxx survived a near-fatal medical crisis, and the details of his collapse are very real. He spent weeks in a coma. Doctors gave him slim chances of survival, and he lost nearly 20 days of his life. Those facts stand alone, unshakable. Beyond that, everything else, the conspiracy theories, the poisoning allegations, the whispers about private parties, remains unverified, a mix of speculation and interpretation. But when you step back and look at the bigger picture, a pattern emerges that is hard to ignore. Hollywood, especially at its most exclusive levels, operates on unspoken rules. Power, wealth, and secrecy can create an environment where even small actions carry massive consequences. Jamie's story shows how quickly privilege and danger can intertwine, how insider knowledge can be both a shield and a trap. For years, his choices and presence in these circles were painted as celebrity fun, jokes, or harmless networking. But when the ecosystem starts to unravel, past decisions are scrutinized in a very different light. In the end, the story doesn't give us easy answers. Jamie Foxx might be a survivor, a participant, or a bit of both. The stroke, the lawsuits, the rumors, they are all pieces of a puzzle that may never be fully solved. What's left for the audience is reflection on the hidden complexities of fame, the fragile line between entertainment and danger, and the ways in which Hollywood's glittering facade can hide shadows that remain long after the cameras stop rolling. And maybe, just maybe, Jamie's story isn't really about who harmed him or who benefited. It's about a world where survival often depends on knowing the rules no one talks about.